Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. This is a frontline update for the 10th of March 2023. Let's get right to it and we'll go to the northeast sector. That's Kupiansk to Svatove to Kreminna. Again, really not a lot happening other than in your flashpoints of Bakhmut, Avdiivka to some degree, Marinka, those sort of places. Everywhere else seems to be relatively quiet, but nonetheless, what does the ISW say? Wagner, no, it doesn't, because I'm in the wrong place. It says that Russian forces continued to conduct ground attacks along the Kupiansk-Svatove-Kreminna line on March 9th. Pretty generic, unsuccessful operations for the Russian forces in Frontline, and then it goes all the way down to Avdiivka and Spirina, which is south of Kreminna. So that is to say that on my map, where we have Kupiansk, Svatove, and then Kreminna right down south, so Kreminna would be right down here, you have Frontline, and then it kind of jumps down to there. Not really anything going on along there particularly, although there's a couple of things to point out. So, Ukrainian Luhansk Oblast head Serhiy Haidai reported that Svatove-Kreminna remains contested and that control of the settlement changes frequently. Well, this is quite interesting because actually, if we come down past, so we're going to come from, there's some fighting around Frontline, this little salient there for the Russians, which I have still fully in control of the Russians. Vuhledar, the French mapper here, has that contested somewhat there. There's a bit of a dip in that. I've got that as one big salient there. But other than that, we come down to, so past Svatove, I have Podkuichansk fully in control for the Ukrainians. So that's coming down. If we pop down here, past Kuzimivka, Podkuichansk. Now, I find that interesting because that was in control. The Ukrainians did have control of that. And as far as I'm concerned, the Russians have control of that now. But Vuhledar definitely not. Definitely has that under contested grey area. Not in control of the Ukrainians, but not in control of the Russians either. Under control of the Russians. So that's an interesting change. And then we're going to pop down to Chervona-Popivka. So that's well behind Russian lines, according to Vuhledar, and behind Ukrainian lines there. And indeed, as we come down past Svatove, so there's Svatove, down the P66 highway or R66 highway, we have Ploshchenka fighting around the gully area here, and Ploshchenka, according to some. And then Chervona-Popivka contested. So Haidai said it's contested and that control of the settlement changes frequently. And that Russian forces retreated from advanced positions near Chervona-Popivka to reconstitute. That's really interesting. That I've not heard that from anywhere else, but I have had that in the hands of the Russians now for a good few weeks. Possibly, I can't even remember when there was a time where that was properly contested, where the Ukrainians were had advanced up to the highway and had fire control over that. I wouldn't say that's the case anymore, especially since the so-called Russian offensive. But yeah, interesting from Haidai to have mentioned that. Other than that, it's just popping down to Bakhmut way. So we'll have a little scoot down there past Kreminna. Not too much news coming out of Kreminna. Fighting going on, no doubt, all around. I will give you some video footage of fighting around Avdiivka, just to let you know that Avdiivka is south of this forest. Let's look at the topographical map. So there's that forest, and you have Kreminna there. We go back to my map. You've got that forest. So let's try and get it broadly the same. So the forest there, Kreminna up there. So this is the lowland. We have the river coming along here. It's very Svatove Donetsk River coming up there, and then Kreminna on that low point as well, and then Avdiivka possibly on some bit of high ground here. So the river comes along there, goes up to Kreminna, and then Avdiivka is here, and you can see there's some high ground here, some mountainous area around there. Well, let's have a little. No, that's the wrong one. I'm going to show you some video now from Avdiivka. Ukrainian soldiers fighting in the mountains near Svatove-Donetsk in the Avdiivka region. I can't tell you exactly where this is, but it's very different looking scenery. So I just thought I'd show you that. Obviously got good sight from up there. Using RPG, and he does this a couple of times. I'll show you the first one. I just find it quite interesting because it almost seems like a fairly blind shot. Quite beautiful though. Sun reflecting on the water. It's almost like suppressive RPG fire. And then he loads up another one. Machine gun starts having a pop. Gets another one out. Whacks it in. And then has a pop. And it, as I say, it seems like fairly suppressive fire. I don't know that these guys are going to be doing too much accurate damage to each other from those distances. But anyway, that's fighting around Bilorivka in the hill areas, and probably explains why that hasn't really shifted much for a long time. It's going to be difficult to dislodge those positions. So yeah, Bilorivka has remained fairly consistent for some time. And that's the topographical map again. You know, you would have to storm those hills, those mountainous areas, to take those positions to move the territory. Anyway, let's now not do that. Let's now come down further down to the Bilorivka, just to the south of that Bilorivka. There's been a little bit of movement. The Russians have taken a bit of territory coming up here. Just they were sort of back here, now they're over here. So that is a slight bit of movement there. Fighting around Spiony, Bilorivka, Fedorivka, just up here. Okay, let's go to the ISW. ISW says, Wagner Group financier Yevgeny Prigozhin claimed that Wagner Group fighters completely captured Dubovo-Vasilivka, and geolocated footage published on March 9th indicates that Wagner forces likely captured the settlement. Prigozhin added that fighting is ongoing on the outskirts of Dubovo-Vasilivka. Another Russian mill blogger claimed that Wagner fighters and conventional Russian forces jointly captured Orikovo-Vasilivka, although ISW has not observed any visual confirmation of these claims. Okay, so that is to say that as we come down, just to give you some bearings here, there's Bakhmut itself, the south there around Ivanivska, T0504 highway, and then we've got the M03 going up here towards Minkivka. And you have Dubovo-Vasilivka is this settlement that I had under Russian control some time ago, then took it back, then put it back on, and subsequently it does seem that the Russians now control that, fighting on the outskirts of that. And claims from some Russian mill bloggers that Orikovo-Vasilivka is under Russian control. I doubt that's true, although they are making movements northwest here. This is the main area of Russian advance, and they're putting a lot of effort into that. I talked about that yesterday with what ISW also said yesterday. I just want to point you towards this. So this is Shashank Joshi comparing or indicating what these possibilities actually mean in terms of both UK and US intelligence analysis. There's marginally different numbers, but you hear with the ISW, they'll talk about likely, very likely, or with the UK, it's unlikely, highly unlikely instead of improbable, highly improbable. Anyway, different words used, but here are the ascribed percentages. So likely falls into the 55 to 80% range. So when you're talking about most likely, it's going to be more towards the 80% range. Very likely. I don't know whether most likely is the same as very likely. So it might be the most likely is up here between the 80 and 90% range. So when you hear, but it probably is the case. So when you hear it's most likely captured, then that's probably going to be 89% chance, 80 to 90% chance that Dubovo-Vasilivka has been captured. Anyway, there is quite a bit of movement to this northwest. If we use, so we're going to come down on the Poulet Valence map here. Sorry, flipping back just to get so we get the maps in the same place. We have coming down past Belorivka, pressure on there, pressure upwards here near Brestova and this Belorivka, and then up towards Fedorivka, and we get into Bakhmut as a whole. And this is Bakhmut. You can see this northwestern area is the area where Wagner have had the most success of recent days. It is certainly slowed down, but the northwest is their kind of go-to area just now. Now, in this area, just a little bit south from Dubovo-Vasilivka, so we come past this water feature there towards Bodanivka from Yahidny area and Bakhivka. There is some claim that Da Vinci walls, Ukrainian unit, have stormed this area, this Wagner-controlled area. I don't know if that's entirely true. Various people saying various things. They've certainly shelled here. So here is geolocated evidence that they've shelled those settlements just there. So if we zoom in, these are settlements you can see here. You'll just see them being pretty much blown up in a second. But here's the video evidence, geolocated video evidence of that happening. I won't show you the whole thing, but basically you've got troops inside those buildings, and they basically destroy those buildings. And then you see a bunch of troops trying to get in the buildings, and then they blow up the buildings and basically destroy all that area. There's quite a lot of troop activity around there, it appears, as you can see, and they basically blow those troops up. Anyway, though that is, I don't mean to be dismissive. Sorry, I was just being quick. That is that settlement there. That has been. So some people have said that the Da Vinci walls have stormed that. I don't know. I've only seen evidence that they've taken it out with artillery, and that's been destroyed. So that is on the edge of what the Russians have at least been there. So that's now the kind of new edge, expanded their territory gained westwards here. As you can see, it's not far from Chasiv Yar. Bodanivka stands between Chasiv Yar and there, really. Bodanivka, Kalinina. And then we come down to Bakhmut as a whole. Now, before we get on to the kind of central area, we go to the north. There's not been a lot of movement in the north at all, really, over the last, I would say, week. However, there's just been this water treatment plant up here in the very north there that is now under Russian control, as according to people like Syriac Maps, who says that the Russian army took control of the waste treatment facilities and began entering into the Azom plant from Ilyinovka district north of Bakhmut city. So this is that metalworks plant, non-ferrous metalworks here. That is, some people are comparing to the Azov-style steelworks in Mariupol. I don't know how difficult that will be to take, but it could be a real obstacle for the Wagner troops. I don't really know if there's a lot of water around here. The claims of the flooded area, I don't know how true that is, but there has certainly been very little advance for the Russians in this area, considering what's happened elsewhere. Now, in the east, we have, as the Russians have moved through the east, they're starting to pick up bits of Ukrainian hardware that was unable to be moved, so damaged tanks and whatnot. As you can see, that's not moving in a hurry. So as Bakhmut has been hit, there will be lots of Ukrainian trophies for the Russians to take, and there'll be. I don't know. Again, because I've talked about the difficulty of them recovering vehicles like this and fixing them up. They don't seem to have the armored recovery vehicles. So I don't know whether they will just leave those there or whether they will try and do them up and send them back to the front line themselves. And going more into the center of Bakhmut, as Tim White says, Bakhmut holds. Fighting continues in the center of the town. Wagner troops have made slight gains on the outskirts of the town. Let's just put that on silent. But the progress continues to be painfully slow and highly expensive in terms of bodies, at least so he claims. We are seeing, as you would expect, the destruction large-scale destruction of buildings in Bakhmut as it becomes really the central uh, point of fighting rather than artillery uh, and fronts being further out from Bakhmut. The front is now in Bakhmut, so you'll see a lot more of this kind of footage going forward. Now, Kenneth Runt is quoting Kenneth Gregg here, who is a Swedish guy who's been fighting in Ukraine, has been in Bakhmut. I don't know that he's there now, but he does make claims and seems to have sources. Take it all with a pinch of salt, though, obviously. In Bakhmut and the surrounding area, he says the activities of the Russians have been reduced. They are not moving forward and their attacks have become easier to ward off. Our general has now visited the city 3 times in a week, which indicates that something is cooking. We have also made a pontoon bridge to replace the one we destroyed. On the other fronts, there have been no changes. Even the grey areas have not grown. And then he goes on to talk about, it's worth sort of mentioning this, almost 1.5 months ago, I said they will not see another missile attack, another major missile attack by the Russians in 1.5 to 2 months. It turned out I was right. Well, it's sort of right. It's 3 weeks. The attack came this morning with 81 missiles. It now seems to be 95. So he's talking again about the lack of stock. So the fact that we have assumed that the Russians can only produce 40 new capable missiles a month is thus correct. We were sent a real mix of rockets, as well as sugar in the bottom, 8 pieces of Shahed 136 and 131. These were all sent all over Ukraine, and the vast majority were shot down. I wouldn't say the vast majority. There were a good number shot down, but the ballistic missiles got through. There have not been any reports of catastrophic destruction, which is true. So we can well say the attack was a failure. No one understands their tactics because we have a functioning grid 200 kilometers behind the front line, and with 81 missiles, you do nothing. When they shot 200 missiles over at us at once, our grid was almost gone. I do not understand what the strategic Russian leaders use for thinking. I'm increasingly convinced that this war will end in practice by midsummer. Now we have seen a tendency for Russians to run out of the old Soviet era grenades, and brand new ones have started to appear. So this is an interesting point. He's saying that there is a lack of old grenades. New ones are appearing, which indicates that they've run through their stocks. It's precisely what has led to less supply of grenades to the Russian units. There's simply no more to supply. This automatically leads to less artillery fire from them. I don't know whether he means grenades or shells there. I think he must mean shells. Obviously, English is not his first language. Right now, we have more than they have. So if we get our offensive started while they have the least left, we will break through and retake huge areas. Some so-called experts in the West claim that Russians have infinite stocks. This is simply BS. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that is ammunition stocks for howitzers. So those are artillery shells. Again, talking about those same issues, but interesting that he sees Bakhmut as holding. There is a lot of talk that they are actually doing an operational withdrawal and they're getting their troops out, and there have been like buses of troops leaving Bakhmut. Whilst at the same time, people like Zelensky, Zaporizhzhia have been saying, we are not leaving Bakhmut, we are holding Bakhmut, it's useful, it's grinding down the Russians, which I talked to this morning about in the news update. So this is one. Kyiv Independent saying military importance of holding Bakhmut is only increasing, according to Colonel General Alexander Syrskyi, commander of the Ukraine's ground forces. Holding Bakhmut allows Kyiv to prepare its reserves for future counteroffensives and exhaust the resources of the Russian army. So exactly what I've been saying recently. The theory of holding that is that there's a calculation that's been made that's in to the advantage of the Ukrainians, that is attriting the Russian forces and fixing them in position so they can't be used elsewhere. And this allows that time that they are fixed there allows the Ukrainians to build up their reserves, train them up, and get the new equipment in so they can do their counter offensives as effectively as possible. But there's also the theory still hanging around that that's what they're saying. What they're actually doing is an operational withdrawal, and that it's too risky to keep the troops there because this neck is too thin, and actually there's some decent fire control over these supply routes that the Russians have, and it's just becoming too dangerous, and they're going to get an awful lot of troops trapped there. But then there are theories that the Ukrainians are doing counterattacks as well. These keep coming out every night. Some people saying, "Oh, apparently they're doing it now," and actually they're not. But they're certainly doing somewhat counterattacks, if you like. So they've pushed the Russians back south and southwest of Bakhmut. There's even shelling. There's reported shelling here. That is, I think, is it on Syriac maps? Let's have a look. But nonetheless, there is. No, I don't know. No, probably not. There is activity in a whole number of places that suggest that they're not just pulling back and doing an operational withdrawal. So, but then they could be deceptions themselves. So it's really difficult to work out exactly what's going on in Bakhmut for the Ukrainians. Yeah, here it is. Sorry. AFU. So Ukrainians use artillery strikes on Wagner soldiers 2 kilometers south of Bakhmut. So that's geolocated evidence of Ukrainians still, trying to take out people in and around Bakhmut, which I don't know. Would that be what you would do if you're doing a defensive withdrawal? Quite possibly protecting your withdrawal. Is it what you do if you're doing counteroffensives? Yes. So I don't know what that tells you, other than there's still shelling going on. So that's Bakhmut. We're going to move further down south now. Come out of there and come down to Avdiivka way. I don't think there's anything else in the ISW. The Russian Mill blogger also claimed that Ukrainian forces conducted counterattacks in the eastern part of Bakhmut. I've got no other evidence of that in this area that they're doing counterattacks. That would be difficult because there's a river in the way. But anyway, that is a claim. Right, let's look elsewhere. So let's go down past Toretsk and New York to Avdiivka. And Avdiivka, there is quite a bit of activity claimed to be going on, both north and indeed, come on, sorry about that, and south towards Siverny from Opitny, Vodyany area. So first, let's see what ISW have to say. A Russian mill blogger claimed that and again, please don't have a go. The people have started doing this again. Oh, he's using ISW, blah, blah, blah. I'm ISW, and I go and watch my video. I'll link it in the description on how ISW is used here. If you're decrying ISW are merely saying what Russian mill bloggers are saying. So if you're attacking me for using ISW are just accumulating the sources. They're not. There's no judgment in this stuff here. It's literally, if you're saying that this is rubbish because it's ISW, then you're saying the Russian sources are rubbish. In other words, the claims from the Russians are rubbish. So you are rubbish. You don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, a Russian mill blogger, and that's Igor Strelkov, I think, Strelkov here, claimed that Russian forces broke through Ukrainian defenses near Siverny, 7 kilometers west of Avdiivka, from the direction of Opitny. A prominent Russian mill blogger claimed that this one's Igor Strelkov, sorry, claimed that Ukrainian forces retreated from positions south of Avdiivka to fortified positions in Avdiivka's industrial zone, which is to say that there are movements towards Siverny from Opitny and that the Ukrainians have retreated. We have had that over the last week. They've been up to there and then back, and there's some swapping of territory here, and possibly in the south towards the industrial zones here. So actually, Igor Strelkov on Telegram has said, and I don't think you can read it when I bring up the translation here, so I'll have to read it to you. So to the north of Avdiivka, after heavy bloody battles, and I think this is a place called Vesele, parts of the Second Corps took again earlier. The village was also taken last summer, and then I think there's some kind of mistranslation, but I think that's Vesele. So just to let you know, that is here. This village, it doesn't come up on Google Maps, but that's Vesele there, which is a place that has been claimed to be taken. In fact, they talk about it. The ISW talk about it here. Second Army Corps captured Vesele. So what does he continue to say? Strelkov, so Evil Gherkin, this is. He goes by two names. The enemy again retreated to the industrial zone where he has long-term fortified positions, and then it goes on to talk about Marinka, which I will talk about in a second, because that might be quite useful. So that's really what's going on in Avdiivka. The activity going on to the northeast, activity going on in the south and the southwest. The Ukrainian general staff claim that they're just repelled assaults. but there does seem to be some gains up in this area, and potentially some gains to the south and to the southwest by Suverny as well. And pressure on Novelsky too. They have gained some land, the Russians, over the last week or so. But when I say gain, that's like half a field here, half a field there. But I've talked before about the importance of Novelsky for opening up this whole area. You've got Krasnohorivka down south, and you've got Pervomaisky going on towards Karlivka up north, and it's little places like this that can often hold the key. It's the same with Marinka, with Pobjeda here, holds the key arguably to this large amount of area, and the settlements to the south and the settlements to the north. If you start being able to punch through there, then you can move north and move south, and it's exactly the same with Novelsky. The very similar situations going on. Okay, let's go to let's just see what Poulet-Volant's mapping says of all this. So as we come down south from Bakhmut, we can see not a lot of movements. There's New York. There's a place called Mayorsk there, which is interesting. So that's south of Bakhmut. We come from Bakhmut down to Mayorsk, and actually, apparently the Ukrainians have gained some land there. There's just here. They've pushed back the Russians a little bit from there. Syriac Maps has that on their mapping. So there is a bit of push and shove in certain areas. And then we come on down to Marinka, Avdiivka there, gained ground, as you can see, towards Novelsky there, and gained ground up here north of Avdiivka around Vasily. And then we come down to Marinka, some gained territory towards Pobjeda there, as has often been said. And what ISW say is not a lot really about Marinka. It goes on to talk about Vuhledar. So we'll go on to what Evil Gherkin says. Again, he says of Marinka that the enemy again retreated to Zaporizhzhia. In Marinka, a southwestern suburb of Donetsk, the commander of the armed forces of Ukraine, as if imitating their Russian colleagues, has been stubbornly trying to push back the defending units on the same second corps for several days in a row, daily throwing their units into meat assaults. Again, this is projecting what the Russians do back onto the Ukrainians. For a couple of days, human waves and meat assaults. For a couple of days, the advance of the armed forces of Ukraine in this village amounted to 100 to 150 meters and was accompanied by very large losses in the infantry. In other sectors of the front, in general, no change. Which is to say, it's interesting because he's suggesting that the Ukrainians have gained 100 to 150 meters somewhere in Marinka, but at huge losses to the Ukrainians, rather like the Ukrainians' claim of the Russians in pretty much everywhere that they are gaining. So I can't verify the accuracy of his claims, but it could be that the Ukrainians have taken back some land. If he is admitting that the Ukrainians have 100 to 150 meters somewhere in Marinka, then it probably is that. When it's called enemy attestation. So if your enemies attest to something that's kind of broadly beneficial to you, then it probably has happened. And then down in Vuhledar, there appears to be quite a few rumors that the Russians are reconstituting, ready for a counteroffensive around there. Russian forces conducted localized assaults near Vuhledar on March 9th. Ukrainian General Staff reported that Russian forces conducted unsuccessful offensive operations near there. Now, if we go back to the beginning of the daily reports, it does talk about Vuhledar. Russian forces may be preparing to resume offensive operations around Vuhledar, although persistent personnel and ammunition issues will likely continue to constrain Russian forces from advancing. Russian forces may be rotating the 136th Motorized Rifle Brigade to replace a severely degraded formation in hopes of renewing offensives near Vuhledar, although this one-for-one replacement does not represent a Russian reinforcement of this effort. So it's not that they're reinforcing, they're bringing extra troops in, they are replacing. There have been theories that the 40th and the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade have been conglomerated into one because they have both taken such severe losses, and then these are being replaced by the 136th Motorized Rifle. But it's a bit of a problem because the 136th have already complained that they don't have enough ammunition, so they've detailed that they need to conserve their artillery ammunition as Russian forces send the majority of artillery shells to forces fighting around Bakhmut. So if they are going to do an attack, you've got a bunch of people who are replacing uh, a very degraded unit, and these people are saying, "But we don't have enough artillery ammunition." And the ISW say they are unlikely to achieve tactical advances near Vuhledar that the 155th and 40th failed to do following months of preparation to start offensives in this direction. The likely degradation of other units in the area, significant equipment losses, and the reported continued artillery constraints will likely prevent Russian forces from securing significant tactical gains if they decide to resume offensives in the area. Internal dynamics within the Russian military may be driving the potential resumption of costly offensives near Vuhledar that promise little operational benefit. And so you've got all the infighting between Wagner, the MOD, but around here you've also got the Patriot private military company, which is Sergei Shoigu, the defense minister's private military company that was supposed to walk into Vuhledar after the Marines had taken it and then stick their Patriot flag there so that Sergei Shoigu could say, "Hey, check my guys out, they're awesome." But it never happened because the Russians got spanked around here repeatedly, and they're just sitting back here with a sore ass, and it's just not been a good place for the Russians to be. Now, you listen to reporting from Ukraine, and they talk about how in Berdyansk, Mariupol, Melitopol, there are these forces accumulating that look like they could be gearing up for an offensive around Vuhledar. But you've also seen an uptick in HIMARS and possibly Vilka M and these long-range missiles hitting Mariupol, Berdyansk, and Melitopol. So there have been, and indeed Volnovakha. So there have been some high troop losses for the Russians, but it could be that they are getting ready to mount a counterattack in a Vuhledar area. Whether it'll be any different to what's happened already, I don't know. Definition of insanity is doing the same thing again, expecting different results, etc., etc. Let's go and look at Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. Right, I'm actually going to go back to near Vuhledar, and I know this is not Zaporizhzhia, this is still in Donetsk Oblast, but Volnovakha here, HIMARS was hit last night before, and Russians have been complaining that they've just hit auto transport. So Russia in Volnovakha, as a result of the strike of Ukrainians from HIMARS on a motor transport enterprise, a man was killed, another victim survived but was injured. The building itself and the transport that was there was badly damaged, 6 buses destroyed, etc., etc. So when you look at this is what HIMARS has undoubtedly done. You see that buses have been destroyed in Volnovakha. And you're left thinking, oh, what's going on there? Now, what the Ukrainians are saying is that they the Wagner group have been using buses to transport Wagner personnel through southern Ukraine. And we've seen evidence of that. There's video footage of that. Whether that was those buses, whether that's that bus company, I have no idea. But those are your two narratives. HIMARS have hit that. It's a transport hub. Is it being used for military purposes? I don't know. I severely doubt Ukraine would be wasting expensive HIMARS rockets on a bus station unless that had military purpose. I'm absolutely positive of that because that's going to just annoy locals. And the Volnovakha is a place that they would think should be liberated and under their control. So I would assume that their narrative is correct, or at least that's what they believed. Whether they had correct intel, I don't know. And then just routine artillery fire along Zaporizhzhia, then around Novokakhovka, Tavrisk. When that renders, there's been here Tavrisk. There have been explosions overnight, a lot of gunfire. Local sources report that Russian ammunition depot in Tavrisk was attacked. So I could play you lots of very dark images with gunfire and anti-aircraft fire and explosions, but there you go. That's what happened there. Also, as I showed in the news video today, Kherson has been hit quite a lot. In fact, the whole oblast has been hit. 450 odd shells, I think, something like that, 430, 450 have been hit. And then Kherson itself has been hammered by artillery, bus stops, civilians dying. Not a good look. That itself is arguably a war crime. But then again, Russians will argue that HIMARS attack on that bus station was a war crime. It depends. The whole idea is like, was that bus stop being used for military purposes? No. Was the bus station being used for military purposes? One would assume so, if that's why they're spending a lot of effort to take it out with the HIMARS. But there is obviously arguments to be had. And indeed, I think there has been some activity on this island here. So Ukrainian drones continue to target Russian utilized civilian watercraft in the south bank of the Dnipro. Seen here destroying several south of the city of Kherson. And there you get a boat and then drones dropping little bombs on boats. And there you go. Taking out quite a few boats all in all. So I'm just whizzing through this just so you get the idea. Yeah, boats there. Lots of boats have been taken out over the course of the week. So that's kind of activity will be taking place all along these sort of little river areas there in the estuary and the delta. There's a lot of settlements here that are Russian controlled still, and the Ukrainians are just trying to take out those boats to stop the Russians being able to use them for recce and force operations, so on and so forth. Anyway, that's the end of the frontline update for today, the 10th of March. Kind of don't know where I was. Thank you so much for supporting. Please like, subscribe, and share. All the ways you can support the channel are in the description below. Really appreciate that. Take care, and I'll speak to you later.